Hello, and welcome to the lore of Braunhaven. Today we're going to be exploring the High District of the Imperial Port. So the High District really is a walled town in and of itself that is to the northwest of the main part of the Imperial Port. And it was specifically built to house the wealthy merchants who wanted to essentially flaunt their money. They wanted to make an area for themselves to essentially say that we're better than everybody else and that we are set apart. It is completely enclosed by a 20-foot tall crenellated wall, and in the past they had hired plenty of veterans to walk that crenellated wall, uh, to keep the riffraff out and essentially work as their own guard, in addition to their house guards that would work as at many of the manors. The High District has four gates that enter it. There, of course, is Servants' Way for Servants' Gate. This was the entrance that most of the people that worked as maids and butlers and chefs and street cleaners, etc. This is the path that they would come in. Generally, those people live down here in the unofficial servants' row, um, but they of course weren't allowed to generally live in the high district itself. Some households, of course, had live-in staff, some of the larger manor houses, but most of them lived down in servants' row. Then there was also Main Street. Main Street, of course, was the main thoroughfare in through Main Gate into the city, and it opened up directly into the residential ward of the High District, as did Easting Way, uh, coming in through Easting's Gate. They both opened up directly into the residential ward, making it easy for the wealthiest of the High District to come and go, either directly to the Merchant District, through the smaller section of the University District, or for some of the wealthier uh, professors that taught in the university district would also live sometimes in the high district. That was a little bit more rare, though, mostly because you don't find wealthy instructors, wealthy teachers. They are, unless they were previously adventurers, teachers and professors don't make a lot of money, even in the world of Braunhaven. The other gate was the Reefers Gate, which connected to, of course, Reefers Road and headed north. And, of course, that road and that gate are called Reefers Gate and Reefers Road because that is the main thoroughfare north to the village of Reef's End. And we'll talk about Reef's End in the future, but it is a historical place, being the birthplace of the Archmage Maximilian Tacidantilus. So this road, there was quite a bit of traffic that would go between the High District and Reef's End, or really the Imperial Port and Reef's End. And during the day, there was trade traffic that would move through the High District, and it was a bustling community. It was filled with luxury manors and townhomes, and it is so filled with these luxury houses that it can become very easily to become lost in the high district, getting turned around in side alleys and streets. There wasn't a lot of thought put into a grid pattern for the layout of streets. This is more similar that you would see to many medieval towns that sprang up. They built as they pleased, and this is what you end up with. There's just a bunch of side alleys and streets that some end in a dead end, others seem to loop around. It's very easy to get lost. One way to find your way around the High District is if you can find Fountain Park. And Fountain Park was originally donated to the High District by the wealthiest of all the families in the High District. It was the Elkmere family, and they basically donated this land, and they made a man-made forest with a man-made lake and a fountain in the center. And this was kind of a natural green space for people to enjoy. It had a large the forest was actually always cultivated. Very large trees grew up there over time, and there were all manner of gardeners that were keeping these trees neat and tidy. The grounds were always kept clean, the lawn mowed, the whole bit. And in the center of this man-made lake, there was this fountain that everybody would go and kind of gawk at. In the summertime, people would go have picnics on the shores of the lake, and kids would swim in the lake, and it was a very lovely place if you were wealthy. If you weren't, you were kept out by the guards of the High District. Currently, in the current age, the High District isn't quite so nice anymore. So, Emperor Belution Cestus, in order to bring the Imperial Port to heel, at first he wanted to try to bring them, uh, you know, he got jealous of the fact that the Imperial Port was quite wealthy. It was growing quite large, and Emperor Belution Cestus was worried that with the plague going on, the demon plague, that the Imperial Port would kind of overshadow um, the capital city of Glaushine. And he was worried, rightfully so, that the empire would fracture. And if there was going to be a civil war, this would be the the starting point. This would be the home of that. And so he hired uh, the Earthuak hobgoblins to mercenaries to come in and bring that to heel. The Earthuak, for their part, never came back. And so at that point, uh, Belution decided that he was just going to close the Imperial Port and be done with it. And and that was pretty much it. All trade with the Imperial Port stopped. It was no longer an active port, and there was some bloodshed when Imperial legions came in, but that was really short lived. After that, people kind of vacated to the satisfaction of the legions, and the legions went home. They had much bigger fish to fry on their northern front, on the Frosthelm Sea, dealing with Stygian raiders and the like. But today, so what happened to the Earthuek mercenaries, right? Well, they moved into the High District, and they decided to not leave. And uh, the reasoning for that, it wasn't that the High District was, so grand and nice. they they have actually been wooed over by the current Lady Elkmere, and they serve her. And it's a very weird relationship. The Earthuak seem to um, almost it almost borders on worship. It's a very strange relationship. But at the behest of Lady Elkmere, they have kind of put up signs. They haven't sealed the gates, but the gates for Servants Way, Main Street, and Eastings Way have been more or less cordoned off. You can still enter and exit through them, but there are signs warning you not to, written in very badly hand elm, which is common, that says, attention, hobgoblin territory, stay out. And the question is, are these signs written in red paint or is that blood? The answer to that is probably yes, either. Who knows? Or a mix? Maybe. So Lady Elkmere lives in Elkmere Manor, and uh, and She is more or less considered to be the de facto ruler of the High District. But if you ask anybody about Lady Elkmere in any of the other districts, anybody who's a long term, I don't want to say that they are, that they live in the Imperial Port. Probably the correct term would be a long term resident, because they all seem to be rather transient. Now, if you ask any of these people about Lady Elkmere, two things will happen. The first thing is that they will tell you you should not go to the High District. The other thing that they tell you is that, well, they won't tell you. They'll change the subject. They don't want to talk about Lady Elkmere. Everybody, including high-ranking members of the Thieves Guild, who regularly just have people murdered and disappeared, they don't want to talk about Lady Elkmere. They will probably visibly pale if you bring her up. They don't. They are fearful of her and they want nothing to do with her. And so they are content that she is in the High District and just walled off by herself. The For their part, the Earthuak mercenaries pretty much just stay in the High District. They have not, as of yet, come out and imposed anybody's will on the other districts. And so the High District is kind of this microcosm that is in and of itself. It's up there, and nobody in the rest of the districts wants to go there. They try to stay out. However, there are a number of servants that no longer travel between the servants' row and the High District anymore. They have kind of been locked inside, either by the Uthoax or by Lady Elkmere herself, and they now live inside the High District. You can more or less call them slaves. They are not allowed to leave, and that's that, and that is their life now. But the reality is that travel does take place going through the High District and into the other districts. And to be quite honest, the High District is one of the safer places to live. The Earthwhack mercenaries, it's not that they necessarily impose a law, but they don't tolerate crime or even wanton murder unless they're the ones that are committing it. And so you don't have a whole bunch of thieves and cutthroats skulking around in the alleys. You you have, fairly barren alleys, and travel through the High District is actually quite a bit safer than it is anywhere else. The Down here, this was and probably can still be considered the residential ward of the High District. This is an area that's taken up with brownstones and manors that were the majority of the absolute wealthy of the Imperial Port. And the area in the past, of course, showed it. Today, not so much. The five mercenary officers of the Uthoac hobgoblins have taken up residences in some of the nicer homes in the residential ward, and they are not. I mean, they're not that nice anymore. Hobgoblins are they're orderly, but they're still hobgoblins, and so yes, things might be neat and tidy, and everything has its place, but sometimes the things that have their place is a pile in the corner, and so their servants do what they can, and that's about it. At one point, there was quite a bit of vandalism that had gone on early. As the Hobgoblin mercenaries raided through. That seems to have stopped since they have thrown in their lot with Lady Elkmere. In the center, of course, there is Fountain Park, and with their cultivated trees and their fancy fountain, the park at this stage has become an overgrown bramble. There is moss that hangs from the trees. Many of the trees have died and just become skeletal remains of themselves. It is said by some that in Fountain Park that vampire bats roost in some of the trees and hunt at night, and a lot of times you can hear the braying of wolves in the distance, and many believe that there is a pack of wolves that have moved into Fountain Park, although nobody has really confirmed any of this. And it is the grass has gone to seed, and the whole park is in a very dismal state. The man-made lake now has a green bubbling algae that grows and floats on the top of the water, very brackish. It is a it is no longer the lovely place. I mean, I suppose if you're a vampire, it might be lovely, but it is no longer the lovely place that it once was. Now, the weird thing about it is that at the southern end, this large house, there is this castle like manor. And it is a stark contrast to the rest of the Fountain Park in its current state, because that manor is Elkmere Manor. And Elkmere Manor looks like it always looks like it has a fresh coat of paint on it. There are clean lead glass windows. There are beautiful rose gardens and manicured lawn, and it is the picture perfect manor that overlooks this desolate, spooky park. And it's and there are the lawns of Elkmere Manor are always tended to by a number of Lady Elkmere's servants, as well as some of the hobgoblin mercenaries from the Uthuak. And so it's very weird. If you were to approach this manor, you might see some of these hobgoblins wearing splint mail armor, raking the lawn or trimming the rose bushes, and they're you know they're quite happy to announce you to Lady Elkmere if you show up. It's odd. It should throw anybody off that this is going on. And the manor itself is, of course, surrounded by a large wrought iron fence with large wrought iron gates, but the gates aren't locked. You are perfectly welcome to come in and enter the gates and go up to the door. And if you don't see any servants, which is unlikely, but if you don't see any servants, knock. Somebody will answer the door and welcome you inside. Over here was the shopping district, or excuse me, shopping ward of the High District. Now, in days past, this would have been filled with high-end boutiques and restaurants. Luxury items from all over the known world could be purchased here, brought in from, silks from Orentis, and fine cotton linen garments from Erebachia, and perfumes, and uh, you know foods of every kind from all over the world were cooked here. Today, a lot of it is pretty badly beat up. The Uthorak when they came in, um, really did a number on the shopping ward. It did suffer from a fire early on when the Uthorak came in, and several of the buildings now sit just as burned out husks as part of the shopping ward. But there is one restaurant that is still active there, and that would be Villanova's restaurant. And the rest of the shopping ward is pretty much done for, but Salagia Villanova was convinced by Lady Elkmere herself to stay and to keep her restaurant running. And she offers gourmet dishes. It would be considered a five-star restaurant. This is the kind of place that noblemen would go for a fancy night out, or to entertain guests from afar. It is a very well-to-do restaurant that is still active, and it usually opens around sometime in the afternoon, and it stays open late into the night. And even the Urthuak hobgoblins have been known to, especially the officers, to go to Villanova's for dinner or what have you. And Lady Elkmere herself sometimes is known to attend. And so it is a high end restaurant that, despite the reputation that the High District holds currently in the current age, there are many that would speak highly of Villanova's and recommend it. Up around Reefer's Road and Reefer's Gate, this was originally set up to be the middle class. If and when you say middle class, knowing that this is a rich area, um, their middle class is not the same as our middle class. And so it is still fairly nice, but there were a number of inns and taverns, stables, because of the traffic between the High District and Reefs End, and so this was the the more affordable area of the High District. Perhaps you weren't the most wealthy merchant, but you were doing okay, and so you could maybe afford property in the uh, in the Reef Gate ward. Today, the bulk of the mercenaries have taken over the middle class area. Um, Bivouacking in a number of the empty homes here. Most of these stables have been turned into slaughterhouses, although there's not a whole lot of horse meat left. But come to find out, the Earthuak hobgoblins have a particular taste for horse meat, and so they will, if they can get their hands on horses, they will slaughter them in those stables, and serve them up in their own little taverns or inns or in wherever it is that they are staying. So that is the High District. Next week, we will explore Elkmere Manor and see what is going on with Lady Elkmere. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on Tuesday.